Welcome to the SecurityCafe.
All right, on that topic, Max, you just mentioned right before we started. We do a quick conversation. We don't produce this podcast. We just dive into talking cyber, and you mentioned some big AI changes in what is happening today compared to, let's say, 4 weeks ago. And there being a shift. Can you shortly touch upon that to open the topic?
Yeah, I think AI being used by attackers is really hitting the mainstream. So that's one thing. And the other thing that's becoming mainstream is the adoption of AI in companies and by people for personal assistance. At least we've seen the wave of OpenClaw, Notebook, hitting mainstream news. And I think there's at least a short-lived spike of adoption. So I think there's two forces at work where so touching on both quickly, even on the telco hack that we touched on, the data leak that has a lot of even passport information, IBAN information, banking information, address information. I mean, look, guys, we've seen that kind of dump over the years, time and time again. But I think now it's different because now you can abuse that at scale with AI, right? Feed all of that information in and say, for this profile and that person, create a targeted phishing email or find a way to social engineer them, or what's the best scam I could use, and just go through all of the records. And even if only 1% is successful, you have dealt massive damage. So I think on the attacker side, there's a real shift happening where there's new ways of exploiting that kind of data dump and getting access to more data and profiting on it. And at the same time, there's so many new risks coming, which is a totally different bucket, with AI agents being used by companies. Every CISO I talk to may be similar to you, Quint, in my role. So every day I speak to CISOs and security teams. Every single one is touching on AI and how they want to secure it. Not always as a top priority, but it's always coming up.
No, correct. I think I see the same thing, and especially about agentic attacks, but also people who want to look at, for instance, pen testing with agents and stuff like that. Yeah, and I think there's not a lot of conversations where you can't talk about AI anymore. It's the norm, and even if I look like half a year ago, I was using it already for more than a year. I think more than years. But now my kids and my wife are also using it. Yeah, so it's mainstream. And but what people don't know is what, for instance, I do a lot of. That's a bit of a hobby of mine. I do a lot with prompt injection. Yeah. Because I like it. I just love what you can get out of a tool. Let's call AI a tool. I know it's a bit diminishing to say that, but it's more than that. But I love what you can get out of it without it wants you to give it. Yeah, that brings me back to an anecdote of the past, of course. Now we're talking about prompt injection, and the power of an LLM or an AI is so much more powerful. But back in the day, when I was still young, we did the same with SQL databases, and you could ask them questions, and there wasn't any protection available back then, and it would give you the answers if you were creative enough, and that's the same today with the AI. And you hear my voice tonal change. I love playing with that, guys. But once I'm saying that, you can see my eyes as well blinking now. That's also a very powerful tool that you have at your disposal, and you can break a lot of things with that, So how do you think about that, or is that something you're looking at as well, Max?
Yeah, as you see, I can barely contain myself and just running over your mouth there. I agree. When you said SQL injection, you had me, right? I remember adjusting the SQL map in Backtrack 3 or 4, like templates, to make sure I got the blind injection right and added new strings and stuff like that. So that's how we all grew up, I think. Yeah. And I think it's just changing the game a lot. There's so much dynamic in there, especially for attackers, right? We've seen the Anthropic report about suspected Chinese threat actors using their infrastructure to scale and conduct attacks. I think that in itself is so interesting to think about. Why would they use like a Western AI to do it? Was it important? Operations they ran there? What are the guardrails on that? I spoke to a friend of mine, Sven Herpik. He's one of the leading, I would say, European or worldwide security policy researchers and on nation state to nation state threat acting behaviors in cyber operations. And we talked about guardrails, how a nation state can contain their malware or their cyber operation. If the US says, I'm going to hit this country, or if Germany says, I'm going to hit that country, or if Russia says, I'm going to hit that country, it doesn't matter. For that operation, for that purpose, how can you constrain your attack without making it spill over? How do you stop it from becoming a WannaCry or a Stuxnet or NotPetya? That is extremely relevant if you think about geopolitical impact and spillover effects and maybe going from military infrastructure by accident into civilian healthcare or hospitals and stuff like that. So what I'm getting to is you're right on the prompt injection. And I think we're seeing that attackers are starting to use that. We've seen rapid adoption in phishing even years ago. But now I think we see that APTs, nation states, have put the right policies in place. They've done their research. They created their own infrastructure to use that. And we're at the imminent phase of this becoming mainstream for state operations, for state actors to really use that.
I think we've seen an actual event already happening of that. That was when the US invaded, well, do we call it invaded, Venezuela? Yeah,
A short one.
We all have seen examples or patterns that, we as cyber guys said in the past, this is probably nation state activity as well, just to test us. Yeah. In Europe, in everywhere around the world, we've seen something from Russia in Poland as well on the national grid. But first time ever was a US president who said when they did that, we had some skills, he said in his speech, some special skills so we could put the lights out for some time. And that's exactly what you're referring to, I think, right?
I do to a certain degree. I think that's such an interesting one, the Venezuela coup. I think the president said they've got a discombobulator or something like this. And it's hard to say, is it just, saber rattling to put the fear into the opponents? Is there something true to it? I think cyber used to have most value in the pre-operation stage, in the reconnaissance and identifying physical locations, intercepting communications, surveillance work. But of course, we often, we three also talk about the physical impact by switching off the lights, disabling weapon systems, by interrupting communication channels in live operation. But that stuff is really hard and it's sometimes unreliable. So I think we don't know the details about that specific operation, but you're right on my point. We're entering a new phase where cyber might become more operational. But what I want to touch on exactly is that with the advent of AI in cyber operations, are they maybe losing more control? Like, can they constrict what the AI is doing? What if they use an agent? Imagine Stuxnet today, not run by static scripts and, very specific exploits done by humans, but by an agent that has some instructions and prompts and can do it by itself. Would that look better or worse? Is there more danger in that? I think these are questions we have to face as nations.
On that topic, because I just mentioned agentic pen testing, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. I think when you do that, and you tell the agent or you train the agent in a way, you'll run into the risk that it will break a lot of things as well while you do the test.
Yes.
You remember in the old days, Max, when we were young. You were younger than me, of course, but you did a lot of pen testing as well, right? And there was always a risk to break something when you did that, right? Yeah. It was done by humans, and still things could break. Can you imagine when you ask an agent to do that, right? You have probably not a lot of control about breaking stuff anymore.
Well, and still this weekend, my nephew just twiggled around a little bit with one of these free versions of an AI, and he asked the AI, "I have a car, and there's a car wash 100 meters ahead. I need to wash my car. Is it better to go on foot or take my car?" And the thing actually started to answer, just go by foot because it's just 100 yards away. It's very close. So why bother taking the car? It's good for your health. And it started on a rampage why you should go walking, why 100 meters walking is better than taking the car. But the initial idea was, I need to wash my car.
Yeah,
If,
it
if
had
the
an
same
opinion all of a
happens in
sudden.
this, if the same
It's going
happens
to
in your agentic pen testing,
exactly.
right? I need to break something. I will go in, right? And is that then where does these security features, so to say, you cannot harm a human or whatever, right? How will that then come into play when you use something like that? Especially when you create an agent to build new agents. Where and how can we then keep that in line, keep that within the guardrails we've designed?
I think the AI in Menno's head is starting to hallucinate now a little bit, don't you think? No, I'm kidding.
No,
I'm
it's
kidding,
not.
guys. But no, you bring with this example me on so much other thoughts immediately again, right? It is about so again. I brought the example by purpose, agentic pen testing, yeah. But the bad guys, they're not pen testing guys. They're not testing. They are making sure they get in, yeah. And that is the big difference, right? We as defenders, we still need to make sure we don't break stuff, yeah, because we're probably getting paid, or well, we don't necessarily need to be paid for that, but we are here to help people defend to what matters most to someone else. Yeah, that's why we are here. That's what we love to do.
Yeah.
But the other guys have a very different purpose. They
couldn't
don't want
agree
to
more.
defend that.
I couldn't agree more on that. Right? I think AI in vendor space, like in our industry, used for pen testing is interesting, and there's big steps made forward. But that's hard because you have to be deterministic and you have to be repeatable. So it can't be all LLM based, but there will be LLMs in the chain. But if you come to criminals, I think all bets are off, right? They don't care if they
Nope.
destroy something, and they don't care if they always get in. So they don't care as much about hallucinations as about scale. Look, just let the LLM run. And if it only succeeds 20% of the time, that's 20% free shells for everybody, right?
Yeah,
Who cares?
exactly.
Well, then the bottleneck becomes the cost of the LLM running. So it's not free shells, but probably cheaper than paying one of your criminal buddies to spend 5 days trying to get a shell in that one continent. The other thing I want to mention is that we can't really, I think I cannot look ahead 3 steps into the future, how this is going to play out. Because I was thinking the biggest bottleneck is human hands-on operators in hacking. So automating that part, the pen testing, the running the agent, the lateral movement is what's going to make the big difference in scale. Now I think there's such big strides being made in vulnerability research and weaponization of vulnerabilities that this might be the most impactful thing, where it's not
Yep.
just about finding the flaw in the code, but now saying, okay, put this in a test system and try it out and make sure you can evade memory, randomization, and other defensive mechanisms on the OS, which is usually also a huge bottleneck in exploit development. So there's so much progress made on all sides. It's just a crazy time.
Now you're opening up another can of worms, because that's stuff. Well, I think you and I did as well in the past, right? Find weaknesses in back in the day it was OSs and networks. Now you can't talk about that anymore. You got your cloud, you got your on-prem, you got your everything is different, right? But having the ability that 20 years ago that something could automate all that a human had to try and think and try again and put all your creativity, and automating that with an LLM. We don't oversee the consequences of that yet, I think.
You can see Quint's mind being blown.
I'm seeing it happening here,
The words stop coming out. It's just noise.
I visually see what the consequence of that is, but I cannot explain it.
Yeah, I agree. And just one more point on that. Even in 2016, I think DARPA had the grand challenge to automate vulnerability research and patching, and Shellfish and Mayhem were the winning 2 autonomous engines. That was way before machine learning was big and way before LLMs. And they still managed to create autonomous systems that could find vulnerabilities by themselves and patch them to a certain level. And these were like 3 months running student projects, more or less. I don't try to diminish what they did. It's amazing. But now think about what's happening behind closed doors with billions of dollars of budget with a new tech.
No,
And that's why I
that's
come
the
back.
thing that was basically popping up in my mind, basically.
Exactly, right? What's possible now. But then bringing back to the core episode that we did today, I think we have to think about systemic resilience more, like on the national level. Because right now, look, a telco gets popped, a ransomware can see all there. I think this becomes so scalable that if somebody really wants to press the button and hurt us as a nation or as Europeans, that is not difficult right now. So we need to think about frameworks to change the cost of that for attackers, but also for defenders.
Now you have switched me on, definitely, because this is something. Well, we talked about that before in the previous show when we were at the event. This is all about the entire ecosystem of defenders joining forces together, to defend not just all of the companies in the countries, but also the country itself, That is what needs to happen, working together as one, helping, providing the expertise that everybody has different levels of expertise in different areas. Combine those forces, step away from our silo behavior and really start working as one. And that is what is going to be needed if we want to conquer in that game of resilience, if we ever will conquer that. And that sounds dark, what I just said, the last word.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's easy to say we need to come together as an industry, we need to collaborate more. We've been saying that for 30 years. I think we need to be concrete what that actually, and we need to be concrete what that actually means. Because some of our listeners might be thinking, oh, it means more threat intelligence sharing, or it means more talks at conferences. And yes, that's also it, but that's not going to dig us out of this grave. Now I'm being very fatalistic German.
It is like a football team. If you let the football team play and you have 11 great players, do you and you let them play against one of the best football teams around the world, will you think they will win? We saw that example, and again, this is not a parallel to what you're saying, of course, right? Manchester City, they were really rich, right? And they bought every player. Or Paris Saint-Germain, they bought the best players in the world, only the best, for unimaginable amounts of money, But they didn't win for years. They only started winning when they started truly helping each other in all kinds of ways, socially, emotionally, on the field, and that's where they joined forces and started winning. And this is what needs to happen in not just the cyber industry, it needs to happen in the entire IT industry, from a security perspective, put security first, and I think there will be enough money available to everyone to still earn a buck or two, definitely, but let's focus on what we're heading against. It's not just the nation states, but it's the weapons that those nations have available that we just talked about, and the resilience game will only be possible if we join forces together, in my view.
The only nuance I would add is I completely agree, but I don't see this happening bottom up. I think, it's great to have the community come together, but it won't happen by enthusiasts like us. I think part of that needs to be the top down. We need to make it cheaper to run cybersecurity. We need to make it mandatory. There needs to be accountability. And then having a community is a hygiene factor. It's going to help. But by itself, that's not going to get us out of this. I think there needs to be both sides coming together, top down to bottom up as well.
Yeah, we cannot disclose a lot, but Menno and I had a conversation with someone who will be in our next episode, by the way, exactly about that, and also how we should, as an industry, do a lobby into the government to make that happen.
Nice.
Yeah, that systemic resilience is so key in everything, right? It's also in third-party risk. If you just do the big corporations, for instance, you have all these smaller suppliers that still have that same risk. So it's so much about that systemic resilience of of a nation, right? Of the Netherlands or Belgium or wherever you're listening, right?
EU. Let's also think about that. Do we think we can win this game ourselves? I honestly look at what's happening in the world. Let's not do politics, but geopolitics we can discuss. Yeah, I think those that are big enough and have a single policy, whether you agree on the policy or not, but they agreed on a single outcome, they're much more effective and stronger than those that have to argue with all of the ministers everywhere in each parliament again. And there will always be a different outcome. And I think, something serious probably will need to happen for people to truly unite, right?
Unfortunately, that is a little bit of the way of the world that we live in, at least in the EU, right? We something needs to happen before we need to fix it, right? That's.
But let's not stop at a negative one, because it's again close to close this one. Something positive we need to share. What's working, Max? Where can we be proud of as maybe as a country, as a united union in Europe, or something you do yourself, basically?
So many things, right? I think it's important to speak about the challenges and problems, but I'm an optimist. I think we're doing amazing things. I think stuff like NIS2, it needs to go away, but away as in it needs to go a long way to be implemented properly, but it has come an immeasurable wave. Compare this to legislation from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. That doesn't mean we should get complacent, but I think we are walking the right steps. So I'm very positive on that. I think there's amazing developments on the adoption of machine learning for cyber defense, to speeding up SOC operations, to finding vulnerabilities early. I think there's so much happening. And for the first time, from a tech perspective, I think we can have the upper hand. The fact that we said earlier in the episode, ransomware, it feels like at least it's going down and other attack vectors are coming up, I think that's a good thing, right? I care very much about operations and continuing business operations. Data leaks hurt. But if I think about systemic resilience again and, making sure the buses are running and you get energy to your house, then ransomware can be really bad. So anyway, I'm digressing, but I think there's loads of good things happening.
But then snow falls out of the sky, right?
And everything stops.
Let's not go there. All right.
Yeah.
Max,
amazing, guys.
It's been a real pleasure having you on the show once again, and I love talking to you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Definitely, thank you very much. This was actually the wrap up of today. So we have a main section and now this after talk. Thanks for joining again, guys, and hope to see you somewhere in a later episode. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Perfect.
Bye, guys.